You know, the thing that really gets to you, the part that settles deep in your bones after the storm has passed, it's the silence. Right now it's just me, these damn cardboard boxes that smell like dust and broken promises, and this bottle of cheap whiskey. It tastes like, I don't know, man, like freedom mixed with battery acid. It's a hell of a cocktail, let me tell you, burns all the way down. Everyone on the outside, they expect the end to be some big, dramatic explosion. A screaming match that the neighbors can hear, plates smashing against the wall like in some B-list movie, tires screeching as someone peels out of the driveway into the night. They want the big finale, the cinematic climax, but that's just a load of Hollywood bullshit. For me, the end of a 5-year relationship, my entire fucking world, wasn't a bang. It was a whisper, it was the quiet, unassuming rustle of a single piece of paper. A goddamn tax document of all the mundane, soul-crushing things in this world. That's what it took to detonate everything I thought was real. 5 years, man, you share a bed, a home, plans for kids, a dog you both picked out. You think you know every line on their face, the way her eyes crinkle when she laughs, every story she tells about her past. And then, in one gut-wrenching moment of clarity, you realize you've just been the lead investor in a very elaborate, long-running one-woman show. You weren't a partner, you were the funding, the patron, and you never even got to read the script. And now it's just quiet. The phone doesn't ring, no footsteps in the other room. Just the hum of the empty refrigerator, and I'm sitting here trying to figure out if this silence is the best sound I've ever heard or the goddamn scariest. I met Morgan at a friend's art show. The place was stuffy, full of polite, hushed conversations and the faint smell of oil paint and cheap wine. I was about to leave when I saw her. She was standing by a tall window looking out at the rain-slicked street, and she had this aura of beautiful melancholy, like a bird with a perfectly preened, yet broken, wing. She wasn't just sad, she was tragically, poetically sad, and I, like a fool, found that irresistible. When we started talking, her story just tumbled out, almost as if she'd been waiting for someone to ask. It was a story designed to be rescued from. The centerpiece, the main villain, was her father, a man named Caleb. She painted him as this larger-than-life monster, a charismatic grifter who charmed his way through life, leaving a trail of financial and emotional wreckage. She told me about his fake investment schemes targeting elderly couples, about how he'd once remortgaged their family home without her mother knowing. The details were vivid, heartbreaking, and then came the climax of her tale. With tears in her big, expressive brown eyes, she told me how she'd finally summoned the courage to cut him out of her life completely. A clean break, she called it. She'd changed her number, moved to this city, and was starting over, determined to be nothing like him. Man, that was like a siren song to someone like me. My life was stable, predictable. I was a logistics coordinator for a shipping company. I made things run on time. It was fine, but it wasn't a story. Morgan had a story. And I didn't just fall in love with her, I fell in love with the idea of being the final chapter in that story, the happy ending, her savior, her rock. The guy who would build a fortress around her so the ghosts of her past could never touch her again. It gave me a purpose beyond spreadsheets and delivery schedules. It made me feel important, necessary. It was a hell of a drug. So when, a few months into our relationship, she suggested we open a joint account, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. We were in bed, the lights were low, and she was tracing patterns on my chest. "I've never had real stability, Ryan," she'd said, her voice a soft, vulnerable whisper. "My father controlled all the money, used it as a weapon to keep us in line. Having this with you, seeing our names together on something solid, it makes me feel safe. It makes me feel like we're a real team, building something that's only ours." How could I say no? It was a masterful performance. She wasn't just asking for access to my money. She was asking me to reaffirm my role as her protector. To refuse would have felt like a betrayal of the very foundation we were building. It was more than just a bank account, it was a symbol. It was proof that I was the guy who was healing her, the one who was different. I handed over my financial autonomy like it was a bouquet of flowers, proud of my grand, romantic gesture. I willingly gave her the keys to the kingdom because in my head I wasn't just her boyfriend, I was her rescuer, and rescuers don't ask for spreadsheets. They just build the damn fortress and stand guard, blissfully unaware that the enemy was already inside. The whole charity thing started about a year ago. It was another one of those perfectly staged moments, an emotional ambush disguised as a tender heart-to-heart. We were in the kitchen cooking dinner, a nice bottle of red wine was breathing on the counter, and some mellow indie band was playing softly from the speaker. It was our domestic bliss, a scene I cherished. Morgan came over and wrapped her arms around me from behind while I was chopping vegetables, resting her chin on my shoulder. She was quiet for a long time, and then she sighed, a heavy, world-weary sound that I'd been conditioned to respond to like a paramedic to a siren. "I was thinking about something today," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "All those people my father hurt, all those families he destroyed, they never got justice. They just lost everything, and he just moved on to the next town, the next scam." She turned me around to face her, her eyes glistening with what I thought were unshed tears. It was a look of profound, soulful pain. "I want to do something good, Ryan. I feel like I have to. I need to put some positive energy out there to try and balance the scales a little. I found this small charity online. It's called The Bridge to New Beginnings. They're amazing. They help families recover from financial scams, give them counseling, help them get back on their feet. It feels right. It feels like a way for me to heal, to fight back against the darkness he represents, but with kindness." I was completely, utterly sold. It was the perfect evolution of her character arc. The wounded bird wasn't just healing, she was now building a sanctuary for other wounded birds. It was beautiful. How could I not support that? It made me proud of her. It made me proud of us. It validated my entire role in her life, so we agreed to set up a recurring monthly donation. It felt noble. At first, the amount was reasonable, something I barely noticed, but over time, it started to creep up. The increases were always tied to an emotional event. She'd have a bad day, triggered by a movie or a song, filled with overwhelming memories of her father, and would suggest we donate a little extra that month. "I just feel so helpless," she'd say, "and this is the only thing that makes me feel like I have some power." It was always framed as an emotional necessity for her. A way to reclaim her narrative. I'd occasionally get a little pang of anxiety when I glanced at the bank statement on my phone. The number dedicated to The Bridge to New Beginnings looked big. Bigger than I'd have chosen on my own. It was starting to affect our ability to save for the down payment on a house we'd been talking about. But whenever I'd gently bring it up, maybe suggesting we review the budget together, the manipulation was immediate, subtle, and devastatingly effective. "Don't you trust me?" she'd ask, her voice laced with a delicate, wounded tone that made my stomach clench. "This is the one thing that makes me feel like I'm making a difference. After everything I've told you about him, about money being used as control, I thought you, of all people, would understand why this is so important to me. When you question the donation, it feels like you're questioning my judgment, like you think I'm being irresponsible, like him." And just like that, with that final killer line, I'd be the asshole. I was the unfeeling bean counter, the bad guy questioning her deeply personal, therapeutic act of charity. The guilt was instant and suffocating. I'd backpedal immediately, reassure her that of course I trusted her, of course I supported her. I was the savior, after all. My job was to support, not to question. So I stopped looking too closely. I chose to believe in the beautiful story she was weaving because the alternative was too ugly, too monstrous to even contemplate. The night it all came crashing down was a Tuesday. Morgan was out with her friends for a book club, which was my cue to tackle the mountain of paperwork for our taxes. I spread everything out on the dining room table, W-2s, bank statements, the whole miserable pile. I was on autopilot, just plugging numbers into a spreadsheet until I got to the charitable donations section. I pulled up the annual summary from our joint account, and there it was, The Bridge to New Beginnings. The total for the year stared back at me from the screen. It was a 5-figure number. A number so large it made me feel dizzy. It was more than a quarter of my take-home pay. For the first time, the guilt didn't kick in. The emotional manipulation wasn't there. It was just me and the cold, hard number, and it felt wrong, deeply, fundamentally wrong. My heart started beating a little faster. On a whim, a little spark of, I don't know, self-preservation, I typed "The Bridge to New Beginnings" into the search bar. The results were sparse. There was no big, professional charity website, no news articles, no glowing testimonials, just a cheap, amateurish-looking site made from some free template. It was full of vague platitudes about hope and rebuilding, but had no specific details, no staff bios, no annual reports. My unease grew into a cold dread. I clicked on the Contact Us page. The registered address wasn't an office building. It was a P.O. box. A P.O. box in a tiny, forgettable town in rural Pennsylvania. And that's when the floor fell out from under me. Hanover Creek, Pennsylvania. The name hit me like a physical blow. Hanover Creek. That was the town Morgan had mentioned ages ago in one of her stories. It was the last place anyone had seen her father, Caleb, before he'd supposedly disappeared off the face of the earth. My blood ran cold. My hands started shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse. This couldn't be a coincidence. It was impossible. I started digging frantically. I searched the town's public records, business registries, anything I could find. Nothing under "The Bridge to New Beginnings." But my brain was on fire. Caleb, she said he used aliases. What if? I went back to the charity's website looking for a name, any name. Tucked away in the fine print of the privacy policy was a name I didn't recognize. Registered Agent Jonathan K. Bachman. It was a long shot, but I plugged it into a public records database that aggregates information from across states. I paid the $20 fee without a second thought. The search results loaded, and there it was, Jonathan K. Bachman, and right below it a list of known aliases. The third name on the list made the air leave my lungs in a single, silent gasp. Caleb fucking Thorne. It was him, the monster from her stories, the man she had supposedly cut out of her life forever. He wasn't a ghost, he was the director of her favorite charity, the charity funded almost exclusively by me. The money wasn't balancing any cosmic scales. It was going directly into the pocket of the very man she claimed to despise. The whole thing, the tears, the trauma, the healing, the 5 years of my life, it was all a lie. A single, elaborate 5-year-long con, and I was the mark. I didn't scream, I didn't throw my laptop against the wall. The rage was so immense, so pure, it was silent. It was a white-hot, crystalline certainty that settled in my chest. In that moment, the savior part of my brain just switched off. The fortress I'd built for her crumbled, and all that was left was the chilling realization that I'd been guarding the saboteur the entire time. My first instinct wasn't to confront her, it was to protect myself. The con artist's daughter had learned her lessons well, and I was out of my depth. This wasn't a lover's quarrel anymore. This was a crime scene. My hands, which had been shaking, were now steady. I moved with a strange, detached precision. I printed everything. The bank statements showing the escalating transfers. The screenshots of the sham website. The public records search that linked Jonathan K. Bachman to Caleb Thorne. I created a PDF of the entire digital trail, emailed it to a new, secret email address I created on the spot, and then backed it up to a flash drive that I slipped into my pocket. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I felt a strange sense of calm as I lied to my boss. The small, everyday deceptions of life seemed so trivial now. Then I made the most important call of my life. I called Owen. Owen was my roommate from college, a guy who'd spent 4 years listening to my bullshit and calling me on it. Now he was a forensic accountant. He was the kind of guy who found joy in untangling complex, ugly financial knots. When I met him at a coffee shop an hour later, I just slid the folder of printouts across the table. I didn't say a word. He read through it, his expression shifting from curiosity to a deep, professional concern and finally to a grim hardness. He looked up at me, his eyes sharp. "Ryan," he said, his voice low and serious. "This is bad. This isn't just her lying to you. This is a conspiracy to commit fraud. She's been funneling your pre-tax income into a shell corporation run by a known felon, likely to evade taxes and launder the money. You're implicated in this, whether you knew it or not." The word implicated sent a jolt of ice through my veins. "You can't just walk away," Owen continued, leaning in. "You can't have a big, tearful confrontation. You need to treat this like a demolition. You need to plant the charges, get to a safe distance, and then you push the button. You need to go full scorched earth, man, not for revenge, but for survival. He laid out the plan, a series of cold, strategic moves. Contact a lawyer immediately. Separate all finances. Freeze the joint account. And then, the final step, prepare an anonymous, comprehensive tip to the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. Owen's words were the anchor I needed. He wasn't telling me I was a fool or a chump. He was giving me a strategy. He was giving me the blueprint for the bomb. That evening, I went home and played the part of the loving boyfriend one last time. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to start shouting, to show her the proof of her monumental betrayal. But Owen's voice was in my head. Get to a safe distance, then you push the button. I helped her make dinner. I asked about her book club. I was a ghost, a hollowed-out shell moving through the final hours of my old life. The lie felt thick and suffocating in the air between us. We sat down at the dining room table, the same table where I'd discovered the truth less than 24 hours earlier. During a lull in the conversation, I took a sip of water and put on my best performance of casual curiosity. You know, I began, my voice steady, I was thinking about the bridge to new beginnings today. It's really amazing what you've done, Morgan. You've turned your pain into something so positive. Her face lit up with that familiar beatific glow. I try, she said, her voice soft. It just feels good to know we're helping people who were in the same position as my mom and me. This was it, the final act. I let her talk for a few more minutes, letting her dig the hole a little deeper. Then I reached into the bag beside my chair, pulled out the folder of printouts, and slid it across the table, right next to her plate of pasta. I'm glad you feel that way, I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. Because I have a feeling the IRS is going to have a lot of questions about this particular charity. I watched her face as she opened the folder. The shift was instantaneous and seismic. The soft, compassionate mask melted away, her eyes widening as they scanned the bank statements, the website screenshots, the final page with her father's name on it. The color drained from her face, leaving a pasty, terrified white. The beautiful, wounded bird was gone. In her place was a cornered animal. I stood up from the table, my chair scraping against the floor. My pre-packed suitcase was waiting by the door. My lawyer has already filed to have the joint account frozen, I said, my voice as flat and cold as a coroner's report. All of this has been sent to the authorities. I believe the term for what you've been doing is wire fraud and tax evasion. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't want one. I turned, picked up my suitcase, and walked out the door without looking back, leaving her sitting there in the wreckage with nothing but the evidence of her con for company. The button had been pushed. Which brings me back to here, to this empty apartment that echoes with every move I make, to the last of this god-awful whiskey. The bomb went off just like Owen said it would. My lawyer handled everything. The legal separation was swift and brutal. I got a single, frantic voicemail from her a few days after I left, a jumbled mess of sobs and accusations and a pathetic last-ditch attempt to say she did it all for us. I deleted it without listening to the end. After that, silence. I did what I had to do. I reported everything to the IRS. I don't know what happened to her or to Caleb, and the scariest part is I don't really care. My only goal was to extract myself, to cauterize the wound so the poison couldn't spread any further. The storm is over. I'm safe, but now I'm just here, in the aftermath. And the adrenaline has worn off, replaced by this vast, hollow quiet. The relief is real. I can feel it in my chest, a lightness where a heavy weight used to be. But underneath it, there's this profound emptiness. 5 years of my life were dedicated to a fiction. My purpose, my grand romantic quest, it was all just a prop in someone else's grift. So now what? I look out the window at the city lights, a million little windows with a million little lives happening inside them, and I feel completely disconnected. I don't know who I am without the role of the savior. I just know I'm tired. It's a calm, but it's an empty calm. It's the quiet of a battlefield after the war is over. You survived, but you're standing alone in a wasteland, and you have no idea where to even start rebuilding.